The morning sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Sarah Hamilton stepped out of her gleaming black car, her Louboutin heels clicking against the pristine pavement. At 28, she was Manhattan's youngest hedge fund director. Her life a carefully orchestrated symphony of success. The 3-carat diamond engagement ring on her finger caught the light. A $50,000 symbol of her upcoming marriage to Richard Blackwood III, heir to a real estate empire. Sarah had everything money could buy, yet as she hurried toward her corner office in the glass tower that pierced the New York skyline, she felt an inexplicable emptiness gnawing at her chest. "Morning, Ms. Hamilton," her assistant chirped, but Sarah barely acknowledged her. Already buried in her phone, checking overnight market fluctuations from Tokyo and London. The day blurred past in a whirlwind of conference calls, acquisition deals, and champagne lunches with clients. By evening, exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders as she made her way to the subway station. Choosing the Underground over her usual car service, a rare moment of wanting to feel connected to the city's pulse. The platform buzzed with the typical New York energy. Business people checking phones, tourists consulting maps, street musicians filling the air with melodies. Sarah found herself standing near a weathered man sitting against the tiled wall, his belongings in a worn shopping cart beside him. His clothes were layered and patched, his face etched with lines that spoke of countless nights under starlit skies and harsh winters. As the 6 train roared into the station, Sarah felt her phone buzz. She reached for it instinctively, her hand moving with practiced efficiency. But in that split second of multitasking, phone in one hand, subway card in the other, disaster struck. Her engagement ring, slightly loose from recent weight loss due to wedding stress, slipped from her finger. Time seemed to slow as she watched the precious stone arc through the air, bouncing once on the platform before rolling toward the tracks. Her heart stopped. The ring disappeared into the darkness just as the train doors opened and hundreds of people began pouring out. No, no, no. Sarah dropped to her knees, frantically searching the dirty platform, her designer dress forgotten as she crawled along the edge. Tears streamed down her face, not just for the monetary value, but for what the ring represented. Her engagement party was tomorrow night. Richard would be devastated. Her future mother-in-law would see this as a sign of Sarah's unworthiness. "Ma'am, you can't go down there," a transit worker said, gently pulling her back from the tracks. "It's too dangerous." Sarah sobbed openly now, all her composure shattered. The crowd moved around her like water around a stone, indifferent to her despair. All except one person. "Excuse me, miss," came a gentle voice. "Did you lose something?" Through her tears, Sarah looked up to see the homeless man she'd barely noticed before. His eyes were kind, surprisingly bright blue, like morning skies she'd forgotten to appreciate in her rush toward success. "My ring," she managed through her sobs. "My engagement ring." It fell onto the tracks. The man, who introduced himself as Thomas, studied the situation carefully. "These old stations," he said softly, "I know them like my own heartbeat. Been living in these tunnels for 3 years now. There might be a maintenance access point down there. The transit authority won't help until tomorrow morning," Sarah said desperately. "By then, it'll be gone forever." Thomas was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands clasped together. "I might know another way," he said finally. "But it's not without risk." For the first time in years, Sarah found herself truly looking at another person, really seeing them. Thomas's clothes were worn, but clean. His beard was neatly trimmed. His voice carried the educated cadence of someone who had once lived a very different life. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. Thomas smiled, and for a moment his face transformed, revealing glimpses of the handsome, confident man he must have once been. "Because once upon a time, someone helped me when I thought all hope was lost. Though I couldn't appreciate it then." As the platform cleared and the last train departed, Thomas led Sarah through a maze of service corridors she never knew existed. He moved with surprising confidence through the underground labyrinth, his small flashlight cutting through the darkness. I used to be an engineer, Thomas shared as they walked, his voice echoing softly off the tunnel walls. Had a beautiful wife, twin daughters, a house in Westchester. But when the market crashed in '08, I lost everything. Started drinking to numb the pain. Lost my family, my job, my home. Been down here ever since. Sarah listened in stunned silence, realizing that Thomas had once lived a life not unlike her own, successful, privileged, seemingly untouchable. They reached a narrow maintenance area beneath the tracks. Thomas squeezed through spaces that seemed impossible, guided by years of navigating the city's hidden arteries. And there, nestled against a support beam, caught by a small pile of debris, was Sarah's ring. The diamond caught their flashlight beam like a captured star. "There she is," Thomas said softly, carefully retrieving the ring and cleaning it with a surprisingly clean handkerchief. As he handed it back to Sarah, their eyes met in the dim light. "How can I ever thank you?" Sarah asked, slipping the ring back onto her finger. "Please, let me give you something. Money, food, anything." Thomas shook his head gently. "The only thing I want is for you to remember this moment. Remember that sometimes the most valuable things can't be bought or sold." As they made their way back to the surface, Sarah found herself asking questions she'd never thought to ask anyone before. About dreams deferred, about the thin line between success and failure, about what it meant to truly lose everything and somehow keep going. When they emerged into the bright lights of the station, Sarah looked at Thomas with new eyes. "What's the one thing you miss most?" she asked. "Making a difference," Thomas replied without hesitation. "I used to design bridge structures that connected people that lasted generations. Now I just exist." The next morning, instead of rushing to her office, Sarah found herself back at the subway station. She carried a bag of hot breakfast and fresh coffee, but more importantly, she carried a business card. "I made some calls," she told Thomas, who looked surprised to see her again. "There's a construction firm uptown. They specialize in infrastructure renewal. The owner owes me a favor from a deal I helped structure. They need someone with your experience, and they're willing to look past." Recent history. Thomas stared at the card, his hands trembling slightly. "Why?" he whispered. "Because yesterday you showed me something I'd forgotten existed," Sarah said. "Kindness without expectation. Help without strings attached. You gave me back more than just my ring. You reminded me who I used to dream of becoming." 3 months later, Sarah stood in the same subway station, but everything had changed. Thomas now wore a clean work uniform, his face fuller, his eyes bright with renewed purpose. He was overseeing repairs to the very tunnel system where he'd once lived. "Sarah," he waved as she approached. "How was the engagement party?" Sarah smiled, but her hand moved unconsciously to her left ring finger, now bare. "Actually, I called it off," she said. "Turns out Richard and I wanted very different kinds of lives. I've started a nonprofit instead, helping people who've experienced homelessness get back into their careers." Thomas's eyes widened. "You gave up everything." "No," Sarah corrected, looking around at the bustling station, at the people rushing past with their own dreams and struggles and hidden stories. "I found everything. That ring was just a symbol of what I thought I wanted. But what I really wanted was a life that mattered." As Sarah headed toward the train that would take her to her new office, smaller, less glamorous, but filled with purpose, she carried with her the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes what looks like loss is actually the beginning of finding yourself. And sometimes the most precious things in life come from the most unexpected places, delivered by angels who don't look anything like what we'd expect angels to look like. Thomas watched her go, then returned to his work, whistling softly. In his pocket, he carried a small photo Sarah had given him. Herself and her team at the nonprofit, with the words Thomas Foundation printed at the bottom. The ring had been returned, but the real treasure, human connection, compassion, and purpose, had been found by both of them in the depths of the city's underground. where darkness had given way to the most brilliant light of all. Like and subscribe for more videos.